Okay, good morning, everyone. Thank you for your patience. I'm really excited to be here today at Pixel Pioneers. Thank you, Phil. Thank you, Oliver. Yes, I'm Rachel, after much anticipation. I'm a product designer. I've spent a big chunk of my career building products like Chrome and working on search at Google. But in the last few years, I've come out of that environment to work as the director of UX at a Series D scale-up called Multiverse. And then later as a solo designer and founding designer at a Series A startup called Tessl. And most recently, I've started freelancing for clients, solving problems sort of for similar types of problems at other companies like the companies I worked at before. And in my former life, I spoke a lot about design at Google and why products like Chrome are exceptional when it comes to building for really high complexity or high numbers of users, but also, and more importantly, with outstanding quality in design. And while our experience of quality in big tech has shifted in the last few years, I think if you were to look back at the peak of our infatuation with some of those companies, you would have said that they built very high quality and innovative products, and that many designers and many engineers aspired to build products at that level. So in my experience, what made that possible was an environment where great design and great engineering were codified into how you worked through great tools that the teams built themselves, through an outcomes-focused culture that let people be really autonomous and fix things that they wanted to fix, and really talented teams who got to work autonomously in that environment. At Google, and especially on Chrome, everyone on the team, regardless of function, was using the product, filing bugs, proposing improvements, and they were really taking ownership when it came to hiring. They were involved. I was involved every day in hiring great members of the team. So having had the chance in my career to see what that really looked like, and now having spent the last few years in scale-up and startup, I want to talk about what it takes to make great design happen from the ground up. How do you begin to codify into your tools and your culture and your team that really great way of working, that great environment, especially as you're starting something new or scaling something up that maybe hasn't started off that way? So when I look at the playbooks I use for building product quality at Tessl and Multiverse, there are some really clear fundamental pieces. And lucky for us here at Pixel Pioneers, they're shared across engineering and design. So this talk is really going to hinge on these three things. First, the design system / component library. They're not the same, but they're closely related. How do you set up a pre-made component library from nothing? Or how do you evolve one that has a lot of technical debt, maybe when people aren't that excited about spending time on technical debt? Product quality. So how do you create tools and practices so everyone, design and engineering and others, can all contribute to product quality in a small team or at a big company level? And hiring. How do you set up or scale up hiring to hire great people that both designers and engineers want to work with? How do you find those people who are going to be great across both? And today I'll talk about how to get them right, both at startup and scale up. And when they're done well, they create this really positive feedback loop and drive forward a great design in your product and make it great to work there. And they're also really basic and foundational. Without them, nothing else you do is going to have a lot of impact. And so ultimately, setting yourself up for designing and building a great product means acknowledging a really foundational truth. I'm trying not to be too controversial today. Design is just the experience of using a product, and it's owned just as much by engineering and design. I think this is probably something we all already know at this point. It's not too inflammatory. It gets more inflammatory later. So of all the things that make a product great to use, it comes down to how well the team can collaborate, how well they blend roles, and ultimately how they get things done across the different functions. Okay, so I'm going to talk about my first case study today. This is Tessl. So case study 1, Tessl. This looks really complicated, but Tessl is just an AI software generation product. It's similar to Claude or Bolt, but it's not openly released yet. So I'm showing some things that look like this, and they're not the real product, but you'll see a lot of process shots today. So when I joined Tessl, I was the 10th person to join the team. And I was the first and only designer for the first time in a long time. The team had been working on building something for about 4 months. So they had an initial prototype, some really great early thinking on UX from the PM on the team, but they didn't have anything in the way of a design system in place. And there was a lot of messiness and complexity from the design side. And the most important thing for them to do had nothing to do with design or engineering. They had to build a product that worked for their users, taking their early proof of concept prototypes through to a private beta that would show product market fit. So for them, learning fast was much more important than shipping something perfect. But we also needed to deliver this thing with strong design quality because the market still is fast moving and it's full of great competitors. So they needed to be able to stand up and stand out. And here's what that actually meant, like on a practical level. So first, the design system. We needed to bootstrap with a pre-made component library. I didn't want us to design everything from scratch. That wasn't the right use of the team's time. From a product quality perspective, we needed to build this in scrappy ways for everyone to drive product quality on a daily basis, rather than having to stop and think about it really deeply every day. And hiring. We needed to set hiring up from nothing to bring in the right early hires. And this meant people who were going to be great to work with in this startup environment across design and dev. So how do you build the right foundations from nothing? Well, you start by building trust. In the first few weeks when I joined, the team was really heads down on a sprint to build an early version of the product. And it didn't look or feel great. It was kind of hard to understand. But I could have come in and tried to redesign everything from scratch. I'm sure everyone's experienced that designer. I didn't want to be that designer who came in and said, everything needs to go. It wasn't really the time or place. So instead, I just worked really closely with the team as they were working to do a first pass cleanup, just to make it look and feel a little bit better, make it a little easier to understand. This wasn't the best thing I ever made, but it built a lot of trust with the team, and it taught us how to work together. So we really built the muscle of collaboration very early on. So then, fairly early, I proposed using a pre-built component library to bootstrap our design system. I'm sure no one here is surprised about this, but why? We knew that it would help us move a lot faster, it would reduce decision-making costs, and it would keep the design quality high while allowing us to rapidly iterate and experiment and focus on getting the product market fit. It was going to be a win for both designers and engineers. So we already had built that trust. A couple of engineers on the team jumped in and worked with me on getting it started. First, we didn't know which one to use. Most of us hadn't needed to make a decision on a pre-built component library anytime recently or ever. So the first task was to decide which component library do we use. The three of us spent a cycle just evaluating the options and trying out some of the leaders. So what that looked like from a design side, I had to get the Figma. I got the Figma and started just to test it out. I wanted to know how well designed are the components? Do we have all the ones that we need, or are some important ones going to be missing and that's going to hurt us later? How much visual flexibility does it have? Can I customize things, or are we going to end up with something that looks quite generic and out of the box and feels stuck later? Of course, for myself, how well built and well maintained is the Figma library? This is going to be the main thing I work with for most of my career working at Tessl, so is it going to be good to work with? And then the engineers on the team, on their side, dug into the documentation and played with the components. So they needed to know how flexible and usable are those components, how usable is the documentation, is it lovely to work with, or is it a nightmare? And were there weird, opinionated choices that would be difficult to deal with later? Yes, there were, but not too many. So we collected all those findings into a table. That's actually the table. Yes. And then we made a shared decision on which component library we would use. There were some trade-offs. So some of the options were much better from a design perspective, but not as good from an engineering perspective, and vice versa. But we ultimately landed with Radix, and that was pretty usable from both sides. If you want to talk about component libraries, come find me later. Okay, great. So we decided. What next? We needed to implement it. So once we decided, we used a cleanup and fix-it week to redesign and rebuild the entire product in about a week. It was very early. And at that time, rebuilding the whole thing still felt like a radical choice. What a ridiculous thing to do, but it absolutely paid off. It leveled up the product quality radically in a short time. And it meant that we had a clearly adopted design system in just one push. So we weren't having this conversation again later or finding bits and bobs of different design systems weeks in the future. And yeah, this paid dividends in our velocity going forward. I'm thinking back to Anna's talk and like the value of the return on investment of implementing the design system. For us, it was a lot faster, easier to move ahead, and the quality of the design was just better without thinking about it. Amazing. Okay, so now we had a great product built with our new design system. Done, right? But here's the thing, as all of you know, you don't build a great product once, you build it again and again with small decisions every single day. So how do you keep product quality high and improve it, especially when everyone is focusing on a lot of different things all at the same time? So at Tessl, I started some really key cultural practices which help create this culture of shared ownership and build this muscle. This is our Slack channel called UX Bugbears. And this was a place where everyone could post about their UX and UI issues. And I started posting here every day, and I would actively capture and file issues. We used a plugin to connect linear to make this really easy. Thank you to the PM. And this became a place where people would show up and share small issues and big problems. And me and individual engineers would actively partner on resolving them. So it created this feeling and sense of ownership and action around these issues. You know, we knew that they were getting resolved because we were resolving them. And it helped us build our muscle around the right practices here. We also created this, a way to track UX bugs. This is a UX polish pass that we did with tracking of all of the UX bugs. So yeah, UX bug tracking is something I'm like weirdly passionate about. It's a really good way to know how many UX bugs do we have. Are we actually implementing changes that fix them, or are they just is the stack just getting bigger and bigger? So UX bugs are this great way to fill out sprints when people finish up work, but they're not quite ready to start the next thing. Or I think, Anna, you also maybe mentioned this, the idea that, well, if you're working in a particular area, just resolve those on the way. You know, that kind of cleans things up. And it means you don't have to explicitly set time aside for it. And yeah, something I've seen across all of my past experience at Google and Multiverse and Tessl is that UX bugs need to be meaningfully tracked and picked up along with other work, or they just don't get resolved. Okay, so the last thing I want to talk about hiring, and I know that, can I see a show of hands? Are there any hiring managers here? A few, okay, more than I expected. This is pretty good. This is my why it matters for you all who are not hiring managers. But hiring managers, this is like a nerd zone for me, so talk to me after. Okay, so hiring really matters for you, all people who are not hiring managers, because being involved and having your voice heard in your team's hiring choices is first the way you get to decide who you work with, but also the biggest thing you can do to influence the overall success of your team and your product and your company. And it's a team sport. So when I do hiring with my teams, I really care about involving all the functions. You know, it's a lot easier to spot the designer who doesn't really know anything about implementation if there's an engineer in the room asking them those questions. Okay. So now for your hiring managers, but for everyone else, setting up the hiring pipeline from scratch at Tessl was really tough, but the 2025 market made it a lot tougher. As everyone knows, there are a lot of people on the market after years of tech layoffs, and then on top of that, there's a lot of extra noise because of new automated application tools and other changes post-pandemic, like remote work, that makes the conversation more complex. The first role I posted at Tessl, which is not that well known of a company, got over 100 applications in just a few days. So myself, me, and the HR person, we reviewed all of them manually, and none of them were a great fit, which was sad for us and sad for everyone who applied. And as a small team, that volume was just overwhelming for us. So we closed the posting and we pivoted to working with a trusted recruiter and team referrals, which was a sad outcome. But what this showed us was that our usual playbook just wasn't working anymore, and we needed to take a different approach. So just some key takeaways for hiring managers, but also people who want to be involved in hiring. First, always work with a specialized recruiter. If you notice your team is not working with a specialized recruiter, a lot of time is being wasted. So for design or engineering, any specialized role, a recruiter having that specific knowledge makes all of the world of difference if they're working with you. It also saves a lot of time and brings in better aligned candidates. It's basically the best way to go. Second, you, the hiring manager, the hiring team, should own your pipeline. This means don't outsource everything. The strongest candidates still come from your own network and networks and direct sourcing. So if your team is hiring, think a lot about who you want to work with and bring in those great people. And be radically clear. If you're someone who's not directly hiring but involved, your company really should be upfront about non-negotiables like salary, visa, whether they sponsor it or not, location requirements, whether they support hybrid or remote. In an environment where everyone is trying to navigate all of this noise and intensity, this just saves everyone time and clarity. And it builds trust. And the last thing is that hiring managers need to be creating a standout candidate experience. So at Tessl, and then I'll talk a little bit later about Multiverse, we did things like shortening forms, cutting unnecessary rounds. If you're still doing take-home exercises, replace those with live discussions on pre-submitted work like case studies that already exist. And we always shared thoughtful feedback with candidates later in the pipeline. We also shifted a lot of communication over to asynchronous channels and used deep, thoughtful writing on job descriptions or information about the team, just to kind of bring everything towards an in-person conversation and save everyone time. Okay, so let's move over to takeaways for the case study. First, designers don't design the product. Engineering designs the product with consultation from design. Like I told you, it would get a bit more inflammatory. But what I mean by that, it's not really real unless it's actually in the product, and the engineers are the one responsible for putting things in the product. So to have great design, you need to have everyone on the team responsible for that and caring deeply about it and feeling like they can own it and drive it. And so that means design maturity really isn't about polish, though it matters. It's about building the structure to make good decisions quickly again and again, knowing that you have that muscle and knowing that you know what to do to drive it forward. Okay, so I'm going to move on to case study 2, Multiverse. So Multiverse is an apprenticeship company founded here in the UK. They work with other businesses to upskill employees into technical roles like data science or software engineering. And the digital platform that the team owns is for online training and coaching, as well as serving regulatory requirements like time tracking. And at the Multiverse, the story was quite different than Tessl. The design team was small and the engineering team was small, but the company and the challenges were big. They had legacy systems, disjointed experiences, and the company wanted to grow very fast. I joined to lead and grow their 4-person UX team. The tech org itself was about 40 people, and they were in a company of over 400 people. So 4 UX, 40 tech org, and 400 company. And Multiverse as a company is great at sales and curriculum delivery, still to this day, but they knew that what had gotten them from A to B wasn't going to get them from B to C. Essentially, they couldn't scale their company through sales and curriculum delivery alone. They needed to build a great tech org and deliver great software to unlock their next level of scale. And here that meant, again, the design system, here overhauling their fragmented portfolio of products towards a single product with one design system. On product quality, they needed to both set a vision and use that to influence the whole product, the whole company widely, while also building a day-to-day muscle in the tech org for executing great products. And in hiring, scaling out the hiring process to grow the UX team by an order of magnitude, that was on me. We needed to go from 4 people in the design org to over 20 people in the course of 2.5 years. But first, we needed to do something about this. This was the third-party platform that was the majority of their experience. And we needed to build confidence that any of this would even be possible. So when I joined Multiverse, we had that small and mighty UX team. And the team and the tech org were just being pulled in different directions by sales and the wider business priorities. And that experience made it really difficult to focus on quality. And the product experience was just suffering, as you can see. And the product itself was split across multiple tech stacks and included this third-party platform, which we didn't have control over. So we needed to fix these structural issues and show the team what better could look like. But first, we needed to do just a little something. So I kicked off a very focused one-quarter project to just improve the look and feel of the parts of the product we could control. Design and engineering partnered to upgrade just a few of the core components and make small visual cleanups that had a big impact. I couldn't find the spreadsheet. I really wanted to show you all the spreadsheet, but we just took all of the components and mapped them by frequency of appearance and crappiness. It was great. And we picked the top, I think, 6 to 10, something like that, and the designers picked them up and redesigned them, and the engineers picked them up and re-implemented them, and we rolled them all out across the product with just a few other little changes. And that, I feel like this should be the big reveal, but it's not the best thing we've ever done, but it gave us the feeling of a much more upgraded product with a little bit better look and feel, and we did it by our planned deadline. And this wasn't revolutionary, but it gave the team a lot of momentum. It built their confidence, it built their credibility around the company, and it started to make it feel possible that they would change things. And that foundational work paved the way for much bigger challenges the team had to face later, like when we acquired another company and had to combine 2 design systems in just a few weeks. They're still mad at me. But it started giving the team a sense of confidence and a sense of what good looked like. So we did really a lot of work like this over the nearly 3 years I was there. One of the big challenges was that as our UX team grew, we were starting to see inconsistency across the individual designers and the different areas of the product. So we tackled that in a number of ways, including crits and reviews and sort of in-person processes and remote processes. But a big element of that was just reworking the Figma component library while also actively aligning it more and more with the engineering pattern library. Those things were out of alignment. And this was just driven by a couple of key point people on my team, as well as the key engineering partners who we worked with again and again from that first project. We introduced also a standard contribution process to help tame the fragmentation that kind of kept happening over time. And so as the design team grew, it became more and more important to kind of bring the things together. So we were building those systems. And while we did this, we continued to report back the data from Figma to the design team and the wider org, so we could show increase in component usage and decreases in component detachments. So when we were investing time in improving our Figma library, people could understand why we were doing that and why that was benefiting the product across all functions. And yeah, for the designers, this meant less wasted time and more consistency in our designs, but overall it meant a lot more velocity for the team, and they understood that when we reported back the metrics. Okay, so this is much more what the product looks like today. That third-party product still exists for a tiny fraction of users, but we've mostly been able to push it out the door, and things look a lot more polished and clean, but more importantly, the experience of the product is a lot more polished and clean. The question you're probably asking is, did this beautiful polished experience happen just by improving the design system? And of course, the answer is no. At scale, great design is much more about influence than it is about execution. So it wasn't just about the design system. We needed wider buy-in from leadership and partnership with all parts of the business to make this happen. So to do that, we needed to look ahead. We created vision stories to articulate where we were going well before we started this trip. So how did that look? Again, back to when I first joined Multiverse, the VP of Product and I wanted to create a story to persuade the company to shift their focus more towards technology and to give us a bit of cover to spend more time and energy actually building great products as opposed to reacting to all of those important fires in the business. So this work, kind of developing a vision, was a month-long effort. It involved learning about how influence worked at Multiverse. It was very different than Google. At Google, ideas trickled up from the bottom. You could start to talk to key people. They would buy in, start to work on it, and it would all trickle up. That doesn't work at other companies. At Multiverse, we tried it, it didn't work, and then went directly to the CEO and said, we want to do this. And he said, great. So we partnered directly with him and started to articulate what the future of the company and the product could look like. And then, as we developed that, design started to help tell this compelling story of what the product could look like and what the company could become, just by creating mock-ups of the product that fit into the narrative. So we presented this beautiful, exciting, lovely video at the company all hands. And of course, we were happy because it looked really nice. But in reality, what it did was it helped convince the company that they could shift their focus. They could become a company that built great software and sold it, and that could be something everyone across this now 600-person org would invest in. And more importantly, this vision gave the tech org that political cover to invest in longer-term improvements instead of just reacting to the business fires. We went through that cycle about 3 times each year, 1 time each year over my 3 years at Multiverse, each time pushing for a much more ambitious vision. We shared them every year at the company all-hands presentations as a way of setting the stage and helping frame the roadmap planning. Each year, new members joined the leadership team and brought new ideas. So you can see this one here. We're talking about sort of specific types of personalized support for some of our apprentices. That came in from one of the different leadership team members. Ultimately, we were able to move towards actually starting to show the product on our website, actually starting to sell the product in our meetings, not being embarrassed to have the product show up in sales calls. And to me, that's if your sales team goes from we don't want to show the product to we would like to show the product, that's the win. That's a big change. But of course, for us, it wasn't enough to just tell this great story, though that was very fun. But we actually had to build it. We needed to actually do those, to change towards those small day-to-day efforts that would make the product great. So building the UX quality muscle at Multiverse looked very similar to Tessl, but instead of just me, there was a much larger team that needed to also start taking those steps. We were growing the tech org with just from just a handful of squads, a few designers, a group of engineers with each of them, to become this much larger org. So multiple product areas, each of them containing multiple teams. So we needed an approach to build product quality that would serve across this much larger organization. And a key part, and the first part of that, was just showing people that product quality mattered. So luckily I had a bit of a title here so I could show people by doing. I just started creating bugs. First, I created this new category, the UX bugs label, to help highlight and track the problem, and reported stats on that over time. And then my team and I started actively testing the product and filing bugs every day. And I brought a chart. So each of the designers, we had them, we would track them, we would revisit them each week. And each of the designers would work to get those bugs put onto their roadmap. Or sometimes they would just tag team with the engineers and pick them up if they were in a certain area. And that started pushing things forward and starting to teach the team that this was important. The other thing that we had to navigate was some structural challenges. So the leadership structure meant that it was hard to get engineering resources allocated to horizontal projects. I don't know if any of you have faced this before. Like, if this product area has a problem, engineering can jump in and solve it. But if we want to tackle, say, accessibility across the board, well, that becomes a little bit more complex. So in some of these kinds of cross-cutting efforts, we would just bring in a partner organization. This is not normally what I would recommend doing, and there are a lot of complex trade-offs. But in this case, we knew that Multiverse was digging out of a big tech debt hole. And we knew also that there was a direct connection between accessibility certification and closing certain deals on the sales team. So throwing some money at the problem just made sense because we could show a direct return on investment. Okay, so lastly, I want to talk a bit about scaling the team at Multiverse. I just need you guys to breathe with me. It's a very aggressive hiring timeline, so we're all in this together. Okay, so I could fill a talk with everything that I learned about hiring at Multiverse. They needed me to scale the tech. They needed to scale the tech org rapidly to support this goal of pivoting from being sales and delivery led to being tech led. And for me, this looked like taking the team from 4 to 20 over the course of about 2.5 years. And they had made good hires to start with. That's part of why I joined the team. But there wasn't a hiring muscle for UX in place. They didn't know how to hire design. They didn't know how to hire user research. And so I worked with the team to build this from a sort of sporadic action to a well-oiled hiring machine. So what does it take to actually build a hiring pipeline from scratch? And as I said before, hiring in tech is a specialization. So you're hiring your talent partner first. We had a great internal team at Multiverse, but they were stretched, and initially most of the sourcing was on me and an external partner that they were paying for. And I tried out a lot of different agencies before I finally found a trusted partner who specialized in design and who cared just as much as I did about hiring great people. We worked together while I also worked with our internal team to get more resources, to train someone internal in design. And ultimately, we were able to get to a really strong place. Okay, so the second thing here is owning your own pipeline. So you need to build a cadence and manage your pipeline closely. Even though you have these great talent partners to work with, you as the hiring manager are directly on the hook for making those hires, and you're working with your team. They're suffering because they don't have the people on board that they need. So I set up a weekly meeting. We reviewed our metrics, addressed blockers, and discussed high priority candidates. Sometimes we would run a daily stand-up to drive this cycle. And to scale up, most importantly, we needed to make this more of a team effort when initially most of it rested on me, the hiring manager. And for people who are working in organizations right now where they see hiring happen, but they're not that involved, that should be a red flag for you. That means they're moving more slowly than they could be, but maybe they're not hiring as well as they should be. So you should be trying to get your foot in that door and working with them on hiring. Okay, so how do you actually make hiring a team effort and what you would like to see happening at your company? To do this, I created a rubric for design and user research. So what does a good designer or a good user researcher look like? What kinds of skills and competencies do they need to have? I also made materials documenting and explaining our hiring process. Your company should have materials documenting and explaining your hiring process. And so we used those materials to make it possible for everyone on the team across all functions to be actively involved in the hiring process. They always knew, like, what step are we at? What are we looking for? And they all knew that they had to write their notes immediately and send them back to me afterwards. And by doing this, everyone became really involved and empowered. You know, someone would come up to me afterwards and say, look, that person was really great. They did something special and like you should really consider it. And individual members of the team would be advocating for hiring someone based on what they saw, or they weren't impressed and we might give some specific feedback. And then the last piece here, which I'm also really passionate about, is selling candidates at every step. So the candidate experience teaches people what to expect working with you will be like. So if it's nice to be hired at a company, it will be nice to work there. And if it's not that nice, it might not be that nice to work there. And at Multiverse, this was really difficult because we wanted to hire great people from really strong companies, but we also were not there yet when it came to the quality of our hiring experience and many other things as well, things like compensation or brand. And so we were frequently losing candidates to companies like Amazon that could just pay quite a lot more money. But after we did things like cutting down our timelines to hire, improving the process, giving feedback, and nailing our pitch, we were able to close nearly all the candidates who made it to the end of the funnel. So this was a really big difference for me and the team because we could hire the great people we wanted to work with. Okay, so ultimately, your hiring process tells candidates what it will be we're almost there, guys. Ultimately, your hiring process tells candidates what it will be like to work with your team. This is something I heard recently. A person told me, a friend interviewed with you at Multiverse, and even though they didn't get the job, they had great things to say about the process. This came from a rejected candidate who referred a friend to a role with me at another company. Woo! That's probably my best career compliment to date. Okay, so you can all tell that I care a lot about this. If you want to read some of the things I've written about hiring and getting hired in 2025, that's where you need to go. And final takeaways. So first and foremost, good design isn't just about pixels. It's infrastructure for fast decisions, trust, and consistency. When you build the foundations in the right way, everyone can contribute to building a great product. A well-designed product means that engineers are investing in design. And this should say engineers, product, sales, marketing, learning, data science, and more. It means there's a universal understanding across the company of what good looks like. And that allows everyone to work in unison to make it happen. And that's the thing I want to leave you with here at Pixel Pioneers, which is we should build good stuff together. Thanks.